Welcome back to Diary of a Speed Reader. Today we're doing the very last episode, which is the 100-day recap. I finished reading my 100th book about 10 days ago. And actually it wasn't my 100th book. It was, I think, closer to 115, 116. I finished filming about 10 days ago. I finally no longer have to post because I'm not a big company. I'm posting all these manually yesterday. Anyways, I've had a lot of time to move on to the next things that I'd like to do, as well as think about what would make for a decent recap. And so I have 4 things that I'm going to share with you today. The first thing is the question I got most, which is, what were your favorite books from the 100 days? I'm going to give you the 5 that I liked, but to be honest, I don't know that these would be my favorite books of all time. I think my bar has gotten really, really high for what would rock my world, but still I would give you these 5 books. The first was Trevor Noah's book, Born a Crime. Without a doubt, I learned a lot about a culture I knew nothing about just through Trevor Noah's very articulate eyes. Plus, he is legit an incredible writer. The second book really was Joy on Demand. Even though I gave that only 4 stars, after reading a bunch of more books on the topic, I actually would recommend that more often than I'd probably recommend some of the others that are more niche. The third is Letters to a Young Jazz Musician, Wynton Marsalis's book. I am not a jazz musician, but at the same time, I had so many takeaways after that book that I was just like, wow. Fourth one is Why We Snap, because I think so many people are like, be chill, be like not angry or whatever, but the fact is life has definitely taught me that anyone can snap, and then how you think about working with people when they snap and how you yourself when you snap can react in comparison. That book just has loads of good advice. The last book really is Elizabeth Gilbert's book, Big Magic. You know, it's hitting me at just the right time. Obviously this 100-day project is not something I've done before, so I learned a lot from her. But Big Magic is the kind of book where if you're doing something outside of your comfort zone, that book's going to help you out for sure. I've gotten questions on why my reviews are all predominantly positive. I'm very sensitive to saying anything negative to someone's book because there's so much effort that goes into writing it that I just think it's unfair, especially I have yet to write my first book and finish and publish it. You know, there were actually a lot of books, some of which are very popular, Sapiens and Homo Deus, which I read them and just couldn't even bring myself to say anything positive because of factual errors, or alternatively, the spin was really manipulative in my opinion. Some people have suggested that I should go ahead and point that out because especially for a book like Sapiens, the amount that you have to read to understand the errors is kind of dramatic. I don't know how I feel about that. The third question, what did you learn? The first thing I learned is that it is true, is that reading does actually force your brain to shift, and in times like these where we're in quarantine, if you read a lot of books about happiness, about wellness, and other things that kind of take your mind to a different place than just being stuck inside, you will absolutely be able to shift where your brain is going. I learned that you can continue to grow your skills at any age. I thought I'd pretty much capped out even at the speed that I was reading at, that I thought was really fast when I started, but I think actually I've somehow gotten faster. The third thing I learned is how difficult communication actually is, and a few of the books talk to this. Rosetta Stone, Elizabeth Gilbert's book, and Big Magic. If you guys come from a different background, you will not understand word for word what is meant, tone for tone. And you know, I have such an appreciation now, even more so than I was already on the path of trying to understand it before, that miscommunication, it's amazing that any of us understand another person. You know, the last thing I learned is really the power of doing. You will learn so much by doing, but what is the scary parts of it are, number one, putting yourself out there. You're gonna get criticized. You just have to keep in your head, episode 1 is not gonna be as great as episode 100. Also, you have to put in your head, why am I doing this? What did I actually want to achieve? And does that feedback actually help me at all, or do I just need to ignore it? And you know, most of the feedback that I got, by and large, was done out of love, out of a desire to support, out of a desire to be constructive. And in that regard, even if something wasn't worded perfectly, you know, that was like kind of how I took it. And even if it was worded terribly, I was just so thrilled. Hey man, he watched it long enough to be like really negative. Kind of a jerk, but at the same time, he watched it. For people that are afraid to do 100-day challenges in such a public way, I do want to give a couple of recommendations. Number one, there was this guy on YouTube who basically went through 100 days of rejection. That was very inspiring, and he just basically posted every single day to try to get over his fear of rejection and negativity. Kristin Wilson, you really inspired me too. I've told you that before, and I really do mean it. Matt, as well, your podcast and the things that you told me about associated with your learning curve, what you learned, what you gained, and where you had as a background as a starting place, super helpful, and I really appreciated all my friends, especially on the 100th day, who personally messaged me congrats. That was a big deal to me. I really appreciate all of you guys. Now, the last question is, what am I going to do next? Diary of a Speed Reader was really for me to have a crash course in posting videos and understanding social media in a particular way. Most of this stuff is going to go onto YouTube going forward, and I may post from time to time another book. It turns out that there are a lot of people who are very introverted, don't belong to a book club, and just enjoy having like one other person talk to them after they read the book to see like a comparison of what one took out of it. The other thing I really wanted to take away was to get feedback on what different people thought would be a great use for my speed reading skill. And interestingly enough, I am going back to my roots. Some 10 years ago when I first started learning to speed read, I learned because I was working the financial markets. And so, I had, which many people know, done a review of every single security in the S&P 1000. But what I didn't do was read the 10K of every security in the S&P 500. I've read about 20 10Ks, annual reports of different companies. That's very interesting to me. It's been very beneficial because I've gone back into trading my own book and doing that kind of work. So that said, I care what other people think I should do with the speed reading. I read the CARES Act, of which a subcomponent is the Payment Protection Act. There's other pieces in it that I think still probably more work could be done to help people understand. But, send it over if there's something you think I ought to be doing or would like to have me do, and I'll consider it. Last thing, thank you for liking, sharing, commenting, and joining my YouTube. I'm still not at the number that I need to get like a special thing from YouTube on my channel. So if you can help me with that, that would be fantastic. And stay healthy, and thank you for watching and being a part of this crazy challenge.